Hello and welcome to another episode of the Heat Check Podcast. I am John Devine. With me is Anthony Chang. We're coming off We're coming off a very happy day. This is after the Heat decided they could shoot from long distance over and over and over again and put it on the Hawks. But we'll talk about what does this actually mean, what we have moving forward, the schedule, and the rotation. So let's talk about last night, or in this case, Wednesday night.
Yeah.
So what'd you see?
Well, they made shots. That helps, right? I would think, John, if they could shoot 60% from the field and 55% on threes every game, they'd be pretty good. It might make a deep run in the playoffs. I mean, they say it's a make-or-miss league. It's cliche, but it kind of is. And you saw it kind of in these last two games where they shoot a season low from the field and from three in Atlanta and lose and score whatever. It was 86 points, I think. It just couldn't score. And they play the same team in Miami, and they shoot a season best 59% from the field and 55% from three, and they win. They score 131 points, second most points they've scored all season. So, they miss a lot of open shots in Atlanta. They got those same open shots pretty much in Miami against Atlanta, and they made them this time. Are they always going to make 23 threes and shoot 60%? No, but they did last night, kind of a progression to the mean, I guess, type of thing. Where they just missed so many open shots in Atlanta. They probably should have won that game based on the quality of looks they were getting. What do I take away from it? It was a needed win. It was a feel-good win for them. I think they needed something like this. They hadn't had a double-digit win in more than a month. It's crazy. So I think it was needed for a lot of reasons, not only for the standings, but just from a morale standpoint. I mean, they were 1-6 in their first 7 since the Jimmy Butler trade. Needed a kind of an easy, feel good night, and they got that. So we'll see if they can build on it. Schedule gets tougher, obviously, which we'll get to later in the episode. But again, what I take from it, really good shooting game. They played better defense on the stretch. That's pretty much it.
Well, I think the schedule is a key part coming up.
Yeah.
We're looking at, you said they were 1-6 coming off the trade. We're looking at the schedule. There's good news and bad news with the schedule, if I'm not mistaken. One is tougher opponents, but where are they getting them? Where do they get to play?
At home.
Exactly. So you've got that, and I guess their first thing is trying to nail down that 6th seed. And nailing down, it's a 6th seed where you avoid the play-in, right?
Correct. Top 6 seeds or make the playoffs without the play-in.
Okay, so I guess one, who's in between? Who you have to leapfrog. And two, what do you think their chances are?
I honestly think they're locked into the play-in at this point. I mean, they're half a game behind 7th. They're in 8th place right now. Half a game behind 7th, which is Orlando. And then they are 5 games behind 6th place Detroit, which Detroit is playing really well right now. I think they beat Boston on Wednesday. I think they won 6 or 7 in a row. It's going to be really tough to catch Detroit, just based off of, A, how Detroit's playing, and how the Heat is playing. I mean, let's face it, even after last night, they've won 2 of their last 8 games, right? And they've just been a pretty mediocre team for most of the year. So just expecting them to go on this big run, even with all these home games, probably not realistic, right? So, it seems like they're locked into the play-in. Obviously, anything could happen. Detroit could collapse and the Heat win 7 in a row, and all of a sudden they have a chance. But as it stands right now, 5 games behind Detroit with 25 games left, that's going to be tough. I believe Detroit has already clinched the tiebreaker. Detroit, I know, has already won 2 games against Miami. Let's see.
One was Spo's brain fart, right?
Yeah, one was Spo's timeout. Another one was both losses were in overtime in Detroit. So they've lost 2 of their first 3 against Detroit. They have one more game coming up March 19. Even then, they would split the season series. So then it would come down to, I don't even know off the top of my head. It would come down to division leader, so I guess if the Heat win the division, they would get it. But anyway, it's going to be tough to catch them. They're 5 games back. And they might not even have a tiebreaker if they lose against Detroit in March. So, actually, according to Basketball References playoff probabilities, that gives them just a 13.4% chance of finishing the top 6 in the East and missing the play-in. So basically 87% that they're going to be in the play-in. It's a matter of where they finish, right? There's a big difference between 7 and 10. 7 and 8, you get 2 chances to win 1 game to make the playoffs. If if you're in that 9-10 bracket, all of a sudden you have to win 2 games in a row just to make the playoffs. And they're only 1 game ahead of number 9 Atlanta, so number 9 is not out of the question, right? They're right there. I mean, yesterday, actually, before that, they beat Atlanta. They were in the 9 seed. So there is, while they're probably locked into the play-in at this point, there is a lot to play for in terms of positioning in the play-in because there's a big difference between 7 and 8, and especially 7, 8, and 9. So that's kind of where things stand right now.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the schedule even between now and the 23rd. So it's like, okay, they have 2 home games this week, Indiana and New York. Neither one's a gimme. Next week, okay, they have the Wizards.
That should be a gimme, but you never know.
If you can't get the Wizards, then you don't even need to be in. Then what? At Cleveland, Minnesota, who's a tough team.
Yeah.
And Chicago seems to give them a hard time. Don't know why. But they have those. So, like I said, a lot at home. Next week, they have the Hornets at home, Clippers, Celtics at home. Then they're in the Grizzlies. Yeah, then they're at the Knicks, Pistons, Rockets, and Hornets. So, you're talking like 5 or 6 teams that if you look on first blush, you go, they should win. But that's not guaranteed either. Look, he's already said they lost to Detroit twice. And if you told us at the beginning of the season that was going to happen, I'd tell you probably not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Heat have played the fewest home games in the league this season so far. And that's meaningful. They've had a tough schedule, right, as far as just being on the road a ton. Usually teams are better on the road at home. I mean, almost always teams are better at home. So that should help them. But like you said, yes, they have 14 of their next 17 at home. That's a lot of home games, a lot of time in Miami. But 10 of their next 13 games come against teams with winning records. It's not an easy stretch by any means. And you look at the Heat's record against good teams this year, they're 8-20 against teams currently with winning records. So they've really, really struggled to get quality wins. So, yeah, they're going to be tested. It's not a gimme just because they're home, they're going to start stringing together these wins. I mean, like you said, Indiana, New York, 2 tough games. Yes, they're going to have Washington. Then they go on the road to face Cleveland, the best team in the Eastern Conference by record, right? Then Minnesota with Anthony Edwards. So it is going to be a difficult stretch for them. And again, to just to get out of the play-in, they're going to need to go on a big winning streak, and it's going to be tough just based on the opponents on their schedule. The good news for the Heat is there's basically no way they can fall out of the play-in and completely fall out of playoff contention. I guess good news if you're not. There's a lot of fans here that want to tank and want to go for the draft pick. If you want the Heat to try to make the playoffs, they're going to have a shot because the East is bad, right? Brooklyn is 11. I think they're now 6.5 games ahead of the Nets with 25 games to go. Nets aren't catching the Heat, right? So the Heat are going to be at worst case, they're going to be in the play-in, and they're going to have a chance to make the playoffs. But, the schedule it's interesting because you look at the combined winning percentage of opponents left in the Heat schedule. Heat actually have, weirdly enough, the 6th easiest or 7th easiest schedule by that metric. But you look at their upcoming stretch here, at least the next 2 or 3 weeks, it is very, very difficult with all the teams with winning records coming up.
I would say this, okay, for you locals who are listening or watching, the Miami Open Tennis Tournament is March 18th. Okay? By the time we hit March 18th as Heat fans, I think you're going to kind of know whether you're going to be a 7-8 or a 9-10. Yeah. Because if they struggle against these tougher opponents, even though they're at home, you kind of know they're going to be settling in 8 or 9. If they kind of do a little bit of a run and they look like, obviously I would say above 500, but let's say they do a couple games of over 500, then we know they're going to fight for a 7-8. And like Anthony was saying, there's a huge difference between 7-8 and 9-10. So I'm looking back at last night's game again, and we're talking about all these made threes, and we're also talking about Spo, and we know Spo is the master of mixing and matching until he finds something that works. Right. Did he find something that worked last night? And do we think he's going to ride this out for a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, the rotation has kind of been a work in progress, especially after the Jimmy Butler trade. The one notable big change in the rotation last night was Haywood Highsmith. I don't know if we've touched on this in past episodes, but I don't understand like why Haywood keeps going up and down playing time and falling out of the rotation, going back into the rotation, falling out of the rotation. Yeah, is he a great player? No, but he fits what this team needs, and he hadn't played in 4 straight games. I think five of the last 6 games he hadn't played in. He gets in the first quarter on Wednesday night against the Hawks. Immediately grabs 2 offensive rebounds, like on the Heat's first offensive possession with him in the game. Caps off the possession with a corner 3. Just the energy he brings. I mean, he's shooting low volume, but he's shooting 40% on threes. He can hit an open shot, right? If he's given one. He was 4 or 5 on threes last night. And then defensively, he's still one of their best point of attack defenders. In the zone, and man, they put him on Trae Young a bunch last night. This team kind of needs that, right? I mean, how many times has Erik Spoelstra complained this season about containing dribble penetration and containing drives and keeping the ball in front of you? The Heat don't have enough of that on this roster. Davion Mitchell helps, but Haywood, again, is a very versatile, effective on-ball defender. So I would expect, at this point, who knows, right? Because he's had good games like this before, and then he falls out of the rotation. But I would expect Haywood probably six in the rotation now. I think that would be something probably he'll stick with moving forward. But other than that, you look at the bench rotation last night: Duncan, Kyle Anderson, Alec Burks, Haywood Highsmith, Jaime Jaquez. But really, Spoelstra used a 7-man rotation. The only guys off the bench that played double-digit minutes were Duncan and Haywood. The other guys just played nominal minutes. So those guys, I think, will continue to play off the bench. And I think it'll vary, like their minutes will kind of vary game to game based on who's playing well. It might just be one of those things where you stick them in early. Whoever's playing well, like Haywood Highsmith last night, he starts hitting threes, playing good on defense, giving you energy. You stick with them. Maybe one night it's Kyle Anderson. Maybe one night it's Jaime Jaquez. So I think that might change. But I think the group you saw last night, I think he's going to stick with it for now. And the starting group, obviously Andrew Wiggins, Bam, Khalil, Tyler, Davion Mitchell, that's kind of their new preferred starting lineup, and hasn't produced the best results. Obviously, they've been losing games, but played well together last night. And then one other thing we should touch on with the rotation: Terry Rozier, first 2 DNPs of the season, the last 2 games. He has dropped out of rotation. Finally, he had a long leash. He's been given every opportunity to make shots and turn the season around, but these last 2 games he has not played.
Well, you took that right out of my mouth. I was going to say that's the name you didn't mention. I will say teams that make the playoffs, teams that are successful, always have a guy like Haywood Highsmith. Doesn't mean the same exact skill set, but the glue guy who kind of does whatever is needed that you don't have anywhere else on the team. And, Spo is obviously going to know and forget more basketball than all of us listening to this, but it just seems like the team plays better. I can't give you the one loss. I'm not going to give you the plus minus of what he is on the court, but they play a better brand of basketball when he's on that squad.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it was interesting. Erik Spoelstra after the game, when asked about Haywood, he goes, "Who knows what the right decisions are with this team? That's just the reality. I can't claim that I'm making the right decisions." But you rarely hear Spoelstra say something like that. But it kind of shows you that it is, like we've said, this team. Yeah, is it the best team in the NBA? No, obviously not. Are they loaded with talent? No, but they do have a lot of guys who probably deserve minutes, right? And I think that's the challenge of a lot of these guys in that mid-level tier that you can make a case, they should play. They should be playing double-digit minutes off the bench. And that's the challenge that Spoelstra faces when they're close to full health is, okay, you played Duncan, Kyle Anderson, Highsmith, and Jaime Jaquez, but Terry Rozier, who you gave a first-round pick for a year ago, did not play. Kevin Love, who was your backup center last year, did not play. Paolo Larson, who's been in and out of rotation, did not play. And that's when Nikola Jovic injured, right? If Nikola Jovic was healthy, maybe Haywood doesn't play because Jovic is getting those minutes. So it is a deep roster in terms of just guys who probably deserve playing time. And Erik Spoelstra admitted it's a challenge, and he doesn't know. He's trying to make the right decisions, but like you said, he's working through things, and it might continue to evolve. But right now, based on what happened last night, they haven't won many games lately. They just won one. I would think he's going to stick with this group at least for now.
You know what? And give him credit for being honest, because it's really easy to kind of sit here and try and pick apart who should and who shouldn't. But this isn't like, for example, the Lakers that are very top heavy. It's like, okay, like Austin Reeves is going to play.
Right.
Obviously, LeBron and Luka are going to play, and that this group is not going to play. Bronny isn't going to play unless it's a blowout. There are a couple of, and then you have that middle tier. Well, in this case, outside of the top 2 or 3, you've got another 8 or 10 guys you have to pick and mix and match.
Yep.
And some of it, and he always tells them, be ready so you don't have to get ready. But it mixes and matches. So just because, look, last year I would think Jaime Jaquez Jr. would be a real rotation piece. He hasn't played the same this year. Now, some people need to play their way in, some need to play their way out. But on this team, you cannot afford to try and play your way into a rhythm. Because if you do, you're going to find yourself with DNPs again. I mean, Terry Rozier got that opportunity, and look, people were crying for his head for a while. It's the exception more than the rule that you get to play yourself in and out. If your name's not Bam, if your name's not, Tyler Herro, Khalil Ware right now, but even he don't act like he can't fall out the rotation because
Andrew Wiggins,
first half of the year.
Wiggins is probably that third guy that is a lock to be in the rotation at this point. But other than that, yeah.
And we can look at it, and if you look at the beginning of the year, it's all well and good, and it's like, okay, we have probably as many or more legit NBA players who can get in a rotation anywhere. But when you have that middle of the road and you're trying to pick the right time and the right place, sometimes that's harder than when the decision's taken out of your hands. If you know what you have, and then you can mix and match to those talents, that's one thing. But when you have so many different talents, and some people who, okay, this guy's an outside shooter, this guy's a penetrator, this guy is a 3-and-D guy, this guy gives me, rim protection.
Right.
You have to pick and choose which traits you're going to put together. That's not easy.
It's not. And it's like we've said, they have a lot of guys who can do different things. Like Duncan Robinson brings 3-point shooting, but he's not a great defender.
Right.
Haywood Highsmith, limited offensive player, but really good defender. Jaime Jaquez, like Alec Burks, really good outside shooter, but not a good defender. So it's like you almost have to pick and choose based on the matchup, based on what you need that night, and that's why it's not as consistent. And about going back to Terry Rozier, would I be surprised if in a week he's back in the rotation? No, I would actually be surprised if he doesn't get another shot at some point. Like it's probably going to happen. They're probably going to need him one night when they're not scoring many points. They want to throw someone in there, see if they can get hot, and maybe he plays well, and then all of a sudden he's back in the rotation again. So, do I think he's found the right rotation? I mean, it looked good last night, but I think they're still going to be. He's going to continue to tinker, right? Because that's kind of what this team is. It's not like a clear-cut 8 or 9. It's based on like feel, need, matchup, and that's hard for guys because it's hard to build a rhythm. It's hard to build continuity with lineups when you're always changing things. But again, I just think that's how Eric Spoelstra has to coach his team because that's the way this roster is constructed.
Now, I will say this, and Duncan Robinson comes to mind. Sometimes when these guys get moved off to the hinterlands in the middle of nowhere, sometimes it lights a little fire under their butts, and when they do get that shot, then they come back hot.
Yeah, look at Hayward last night, for example of that. Yeah,
and we've said that with Jovic. There were times it was like, I guess at the beginning of the year he started, then all of a sudden he was gone. Then he played his best stretch. But sometimes you can't go that well that often. Look, when you have stars, when it's someone like Jimmy, you can't play that game too often because then he'll sit and sulk and take a torch to this place. But guys,
which happened by the way.
Yes, what a coincidence. But look, the Heat has a set way of doing things, and there is something to be said when you have a box that you're fitting people in because you know what you want to do with it, than just trying to wing it all the way through. He can, and I also think because Spo knows these guys, and they put so much into player development, that he has a pretty good handle on what they can and can't do. Now, Duncan Robinson, to his credit, he learned how to put the ball on the floor a little bit more. He learned how to pass a little bit more. Didn't learn how to defend anymore. There are limitations, but at least people are expanding their games because if you want to get on the floor, you need to.
Yeah. No, it's a very good point, and I mean that's the way Eric Spoelstra's coach now. for years, right? I mean, this is not a
Right.
surprise. He works through the rotation. He's not afraid to change things on the fly and adjust throughout the season and change starting lineup and change the bench rotation. He's very much like just kind of a feel coach. So like this goes by the feel, maybe the way the game starts or guys playing. He'll stick with them. He'll stick with the lineup. Sometimes to a fault, right? Too long until it's too late, and then it backfires on him. But that's just the way he is. So yeah, I the rotation is going to be something to watch. Terry Rozier right now is the odd man out, but I do think he'll get his next opportunity at some point. Maybe not next game, maybe not in the next week, but it's hard to imagine that he won't get another opportunity at some point in the next 6-7 weeks of the regular season to play and to make the most of an opportunity and to make a case that he deserves consistent playing time again.
Okay, so humor me with him out of the rotation right now. How do you see the point guard minutes? How are they distributed right now? And what is he bring that's a little different?
Davion Mitchell, well, he's not like a traditional point guard, I guess, but he played 37 minutes last night.
Right.
I mean, he's getting a lot of those minutes at point guard. And obviously Tyler Herro's playing some point, right? He's handling the ball. You have Bam who can handle the ball. He has been initiating offense a good amount as well. They want him to be that type of player. So, a lot of those minutes are going to Davion at this point. That's the guy I would point to, is playing heavy minutes. And he's not always going to shoot 5 of 5 on threes like he did against Atlanta. He's not known as a three-point shooter. That's kind of the hole in his game, is can he hit outside shots? But he did so last night, and he's always going to defend. He's a bulldog defender. He guarded Trae Young for most of the night, picking him up full court most of the game. He had 6 assists. He's impressed with his passing and playmaking. So really, you look at the guy who's taking Terry's minutes, it's really Davion Mitchell. Ever since Davion Mitchell came into on the team, even before Terry was getting DNPs, he was playing. His minutes have been cut. I mean, he's playing 10 minutes, 8 minutes. Like they have been cut significantly, and now he's just out of the rotation. So I think a lot of that is because Davion is taking up most of those minutes at the guard spot.
So do you think with Bam, and I guess Tyler as well, I wouldn't say so much Wiggins, but with those two guys being able to initiate offense, does it make the need for a traditional point, does it lessen the need? You still want people who can drive to the hole, though.
Right.
And I'm wondering, who gets to the hole on this team?
Well, yeah, that's the issue, and who gets to the free throw line, right? Well, Jimmy right. Was making up like 70% of your free throw attempts just because he drew so many. And Eric Spoelstra talked about that after the game. He said, we want Andrew to be a downhill player. There's a different role for him. Not for better or worse, that's what we need from him. We need him to be downhill, aggressive, drawing fouls, getting to the rim, creating, opportunities for others. So they're kind of relying on Wiggins to be that guy. Can he be that guy consistently? I mean, he's played pretty well lately, but it's a different role that he was used to in Golden State. Tyler Herro obviously has gotten better at that, getting to the paint, drawing fouls. Bam is Bam, right? Bam does what he does. But yeah, if the threes aren't going in, the question is, does this team have enough else to score enough points? And a lot of times the question has been no, because they don't get to the free throw line as much as they used to. They don't put as much pressure on the rim as they used to. So they kind of have to rely on making threes, a high percentage of their threes, to score enough points to win games, and that has been the challenge for the offense, and that's why they've been one of the worst offenses in the league since the start of the year. So that is something that needs to get better. As far as the need for a point guard, that's been the question now really since Kyle Lowry left, or even before Kyle Lowry, before they acquired Kyle Lowry. It was like, do they need a true point guard, traditional point guard? With the way, especially with Jimmy on the roster, when he was on the roster, you can make an argument they didn't, because they had so many guys that could initiate offense. Bam, Tyler, Jimmy. But having a point guard takes the pressure off of them, especially right now without Jimmy. Having a guy out there who could handle the ball and allow Bam and Tyler to play off the ball a little bit more, take some of that responsibility off of them, I think makes their lives easier. And it just makes their life easier, because I remember Kyle Lowry wouldn't score a lot of points, but he would throw a perfect, like, over-the-shoulder pass to Bam, where he'd get good position deep into the paint. He knew how to throw that pass to him, and it created an easy opportunity for Bam, right? So it just makes their lives easier. So, yes, I think there's a need for a guy like that. Can David Mitchell fill that role? We'll see. He's not like Kyle Lowry, I would say, but he is taking on some of those duties, and he has been playing well as a passer and a playmaker. So we'll see. I think that's been a nice surprise that Davon's been able to do that so far.
I will say this: fans for years, talking heads, you go from one season to the other. We need more size. We need more size. Bam needs help down low. Okay, well, it looks like they may have some size to help him out. So I think the biggest thing on that shopping list is now you need somebody who can penetrate. Penetrate, make easy. And when we talk about penetration, when we talk about breaking down the defense, it's not always just a drive and straight to an assist that leads to an alley-oop or a dunk. Sometimes it's just being able to get in there, letting the defense try and help, and then you swing the ball around. And like hockey assists, where you swing and then you swing it again, and then there's an open shot there. And sometimes, I understand that Tyler Herro can create his own shot, but it's a lot easier to hit your shot when you're sitting there by yourself than having someone on you and you're taking three dribbles and a hesitation into a step back. Sometimes you just need easier shots. Last night they had easy shots, lots of easy shots, and they hit 23 threes.
Yeah, and they had 39 assists too, by the way. And you look at the assist distribution, again, David Mitchell with 6, Andrew Wiggins with 6, Tyler Herro with 10 assists. So those are the guys. Like, those are the 3 guys you're really relying on. And Bam only had 3 assists last night, but those 3-4 guys are the guys you're relying on to create those opportunities for others. And is there a number one, like, dominant option in that group? Probably not, right? There is no Jimmy Butler. Tyler Herro is a very skilled scorer, offensive player, but he's a guy you just throw the ball to and in the playoffs, and you rely on him to get in there and face double teams and draw fouls and go to the free throw line 15 times. Probably not, but he has gotten better in that department, and he needs to continue to, because he's going to continue to see double teams and being trapped and blitzed, and his reads and his passing needs to be very good for this team to take advantage of that. So, it was a good night for Tyler last night. And we'll see if he can continue. It's been ever since, like, entering the break, it had been a rough stretch for Tyler shooting wise and just creating efficient offense. But the last few games, not that game in Atlanta where he shot 0 of 9 from 3. He missed a lot of shots just like everyone else on the roster. But he's been playing better. I think the addition of Wiggins has helped balance out the court a little bit, where he's not seeing as much attention, where it's giving him more space to operate. And I think you're seeing the results from that.
I don't think we've recorded since the All-Star game anyway, so props to Tyler Herro, our three-point shooting champion.
Good moment for him. I was really happy for him.
It was a little bit of an upset, but if you're a Heat fan, you've probably been like, if we were comparing the stats and looking at, his percentage and like the percentage threes, 2s, and free throws, he's right up there. So it wasn't a total surprise like everybody thought, but it's nice to see. I think it's the 5th different player who's won it. So
I believe so. The most in NBA history for any team.
Yeah, I think we kind of like shooting threes out here, so that's good.
Yeah. No, it was a really good moment because, the All-Star game was kind of weird, and he didn't play that much because of the way it was set up. I think he played like 7 minutes because his team got eliminated in the first game of the tournament. But for him to have that moment All-Star Saturday night and win a 3-point challenge, and be on that stage and get that attention, good moment for him, good moment for the Heat in the middle of a rough season. And I think the biggest thing is, like, you could tell Tyler was really trying to soak in the experience. Like, he was not shy of saying how much this meant to him, right? Which I think was cool. You see a lot of guys try to downplay, like, whatever, like, I'm too cool for school type thing. Tyler was, like, all about it, and he made it known that this was a big thing for him. And for him to get that that moment after winning the contest, it was just really, really, really cool to see.
All right, so as we think about wrapping up, and we talked about the All-Star game, I have one last question for you. How do you fix that All-Star game?
I just...
Or do you fix the All-Star game?
Yeah, I part of me is like, it's an All-Star game. Just take it for what it's worth. Like, it is what it is. But I think one way is, I know some people are against this, but kind of do what baseball did and maybe put something like home court advantage in the NBA Finals on the line. Maybe that gets more guys to really take it seriously. But the one thing I definitely would do is I would go back to East-West, a 48-minute normal game, enough of like this tournament up to 40, and everyone's picking teams, and I just want to see the traditional East versus West normal basketball game. If you want to throw in like incentive of like home court advantage in the finals. I'm good with that. I think that's fine. I think that's fair. If you want to throw in more money incentive for guys, maybe that will help. But part of me is just like, it's an all-star game. Let's just go back to the way it was. That was fun. Maybe guys will take it more seriously as other guys come into the league and new wave of players come in. But I'm kind of over like the tournament style, target score, break teams into different, no matter the conference, they're on all these different teams. And I just want to see East versus West in a normal game.
There were whispers of U.S. versus the world, but
frankly,
at the state of it, I don't know. Look, I don't know how we would fare, to be honest with you.
It'll be a really good game.
You're going to throw Jokic out there. You're going to throw Luka out there. You're going to look, and we have a lot more Canadian guys than people keep track of. I don't know how we would fare.
That would be a really good game, and I'd be for that too. I think it would definitely. You saw what happened with hockey last week or last few weeks, where they really got into it. I think, and you see in the Olympics even, like people talk about NBA players not taking these things seriously. Just watch the Olympics last summer. Everyone took that pretty seriously, right? So I think if you put that something like down the line, national pride, I think that would be fun. But the challenge with that is all of a sudden then, like, are there actual all-stars? Because then you're having to account for 12 spots in the world team, where maybe a guy who's not actually an all-star, you need to put him on that team because, so that's the challenge of making that work where...
You don't think Jakob Poeltl is an all-star? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I mean, Nikola Jovic could be on that team for all I know, right? So, yeah, I mean, that and then maybe some people don't care about that. Like, it's whatever. It's about getting a good game and getting a game where guys are competing hard. But that would be different, and the challenge of, like, trying to fit 24 you're not going to have 24 all-stars. You're going to have 24 players, maybe. It's not going to be even. Yeah. So that will be the one difficult thing with it, but I'm all for that too. But as long as it's a normal game, again, 48 minutes, 4 quarters, I'm good with it.
How about, I know you know about Unrivaled, that's down in South Florida. They, in the middle of their season, they decided to do a one-on-one tournament, which I don't know how that would go, but some of the guys at the All-Star game were like, yeah, that's kind of interesting. I think I would do it. It would be kind of weird. I think that would take some tweaking. I think it would either be a hit right off the bat or it'd be a total snore. And I don't think there's any in between. So
there's been some talk about that. I remember during COVID they did the horse thing.
Right.
They did, like, from their own house, they were doing like horse with different players, and the one-on-one thing would be interesting. Would that be like an addition to the game? Would that replace the game?
I think it would be an addition to.
Okay. Like on Saturday night or something.
And frankly, you know what? You could do that even for the Rising Stars or something. You could find groups to pick. Look, three-pointers are usually supposed to be the three-point specialists. Sometimes we get some guys in there who have no business in there. But usually, so let them play, let them go one-on-one. If our buddy LeBron, who pulled out of the All-Star game at the last minute, if a guy like LeBron says, I don't want to do the dunk competition, he may want to do the one-on-one competition. You may get those little guys against bigger guys and see how that works out because, little guy breaks them off the dribble and just gets straight to the hole. Or you have these big guys and you watch them just pound the ball down.
Pummel them.
It would be interesting early, and then they would have to make sure that they did it right. Look, that Four Nations tournament for hockey, everyone's like, I don't know. And you're right, they got after it. And it turned into a big thing. And the Panthers lost their star player for a little bit because he gave it everything he had. Still willing to give that a shot. I would like to see them really work at it. So,
well, that's the other thing too. Is like, yes, you want things where players are competing and putting forth their best effort, and the product is really fun to watch.
Right.
But you risk that, right? Like when in those settings, you risk a top player getting hurt, and do teams want that risk of that, or do they rather have this? Would they rather have this exhibition, kind of free flowing, no defense, no fouls contest where nobody gets hurt and it is what it is? So, I mean, there's pros and cons to everything. I think definitely there needs to be changes. I mean, obviously this wasn't great this year, even though they tried something different. And we'll see what they come up with. I mean, it feels like every year they're coming up with a new format for the All-Star game. So I'm guessing there'll be something new and different next year.
Hey, Matt McClung can't do everything.
Yeah.
He just can't celebrate everybody. So.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see if he does it again. I guess he said he thinks he's done, but We'll see. And also these NBA stars coming out and saying, "Oh, Mac McClung's going to make me dunk next year." I feel like that happens every year, and then they don't do it. So we'll see.
Yeah, and then it goes a couple weeks later. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, we'll see. Okay, I think this is a good spot as any to wrap it up. We'll take a look to see how they play at home, whether this lineup is actually going to click and stick around for a while, and let's see the Terry Rozier watch. Let's see how long he stays on DNPs or when he makes his return back into the rotation. So, for Anthony Chang, I'm John Devine. Thank you for listening to this episode of Heat Check, and until next time, we'll see you later.